and say, welcome everyone to Solving the Mystery of Effective Online Group Projects. And Sherrell and Tanya, you are welcome to, as you already are, start sharing your screen and go with the presentation. Thank you.
Hey, we want to welcome everybody. I'm Tanya Allred. I teach English here at New Mexico State University, Alamogordo.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sherrell Wheeler. I'm the Director of Online Quality Assurance, and I teach students business and education courses here at New Mexico State University, Alamogordo.
So we're doing a presentation a little differently. As you can see, it's in a Canvas shell. And so we're going to be going through this Canvas shell and Canvas course that we've designed. It's not a shell, showing you some of the things that we do.
So today, we hope you will leave our session with the ability to identify preparatory strategies for effective group projects, develop approaches to interact with groups during the project to facilitate engagement, recognize effective ways to evaluate, assess student work and participation. And I'm going to try to make this a little larger.
And as she's doing that, we'll go through our purpose. Research has shown that employers are looking for students who can work in groups, that can communicate, and that can collaborate. And that has been lacking in a lot of our students. Students are less and less able to work as groups, to facilitate appropriate interactions with one another, especially when not all group members are doing their part. And we want to encourage critical thinking skills. So many of you might have had some of the negative experiences that are listed below. These are the kinds of things that we hear people say all the time. We can't do group work because students hate the group projects. They don't work in online courses. One person does all the work. One person doesn't do their part of the work. Students can't find time to meet. Students don't know what to do. So we're going to work through these ideas and show you how you can make your group projects work online.
So looking at the preparation for group work, preparation for the group work is critical. We cannot expect our students to do something they've not been taught. We must prepare them with the skills they will need to be successful on the project. How can we expect them to work effectively in the group if we don't provide them with the knowledge of how to do that? We must also establish the importance of the project. Why are we requiring this project? Why are group projects important? How is it going to benefit them? We need to do that for, of course, all of our learning activities, but I think it's especially critical on a group project. Make sure that the instructional materials and activities you use in preparing students for the group project are graded. This reinforces the importance of these learning activities and helps to ensure they will be completed, because you want them to complete these preparatory activities that you're giving them. If you don't put a point value on these activities and make them part of the grade, the students will not see them as important, and they are extremely critical in this whole group project process that you're having them go through.
So Sherrell and I teach two very different courses. I teach technical and professional communication, and Sherrell teaches business. So we're going to show you how we design our group projects in two very different courses. There is some overlap, but there's very acute differences. In mine is a 5-week project that students engage in. It's 1/3 of their grade. I have 3 modules, and this is the second module. So it is a huge chunk of the course. And as part of the project, students are using a lot of the things that they're learning about technical and professional communication, audience and purpose and document design and formatting, layout, all of these concepts that we've been learning, they get to put into practice with their peers for help. So in the module before the group work, I have students complete a few tasks. They do a case study that I'll go into in a minute. They read a chapter that's all about how to communicate effectively with a group. They attend a Zoom meeting where I show them how to use Zoom in a meeting context. And we also, in that Zoom session, we practice with some of the collaborative software that they'll use, such as Google Docs. When we're forming a group, so in module 2, I have them complete an availability table where they tell their peers what times they're available to meet. They also include some of their interests in that table. They select their own groups based on who's available when, and I teach them how to access the group space in Canvas. So those of you who don't use Canvas may not know this, and some of you who use Canvas may not know this, but when you put students into group, there is a little mini Canvas that is available to group members where they can post their own discussions and files and announcements, but it's just for their group. So I teach them how to use the software and the tools that are available to them. And when they're working in groups, before they get started, but they've already formed their group, they complete a group work document and a proposal memo. So next page, Sherrell. So this is my case study, and you'll have access to this after the presentation. But the overall message of this case study is that there's a group of 3 students and 1 student named Jason has stopped attending. Deanna is another group member and she has gotten very upset. I'm the 3rd group member as the student and I'm upset too. We can't get a hold of Jason. He's nowhere to be found. And then we find out that Jason's son is in the hospital. So now what do? We understand that Jason's having these issues, but we still have assignments that are due. So Sherrell, if you'll scroll down to the bottom of the page, the students in this case study have to do 3 different things. The first thing that they do is that they have to draft an email to the 2 group members, to Deanna and Jason, and figure out, okay, what is our new communication policy? We've failed, we haven't done a good job. What is our new procedure going to be? The second thing is they have to email the group and their professor, Dr. Jenkins, and lay out what the plan is for how they're going to solve the problem. And they have to ask for extensions if they need it. And then the third thing that they do is they reflect on their work based on the chapter that they read about communicating with group members. And so by doing all 3 of these things, they get feedback in an imaginary situation from me regarding their tone. Were they properly, do they have the proper tone for a student whose son is in the hospital with unknown issues? Were they firm enough? A lot of students, when they work in groups, they are very hesitant and maybe perhaps we could possibly do this. And I give them feedback using information that we've learned in the course about being direct in their communication. And then they reflect on their own work. What principles did I use? What can I do to improve? So they do all of this in a very safe environment and they get feedback from me. And then we move forward into more group projects or they're real group projects. So next page. They started week 5 and this is the overview. And what I want to show you is at the bottom of this page, I have my warning to students in bold. I receive complaints every semester that students have enrolled in online classes. So I tell them from the beginning, I know that you might hate this and here are the things that you might be saying, but we're going to do it anyway. We have state mandated goals and objectives, and this one of ours is they have to learn how to work as groups. And so it has to be in this course because it's a state mandated objective. But I also tell them at the end that they get to grade each other, they evaluate one another, and then I average those grades and give student grades. And we'll go into that at the last section of this. But I tell them from the beginning that just because the project got 100%, if you have a group member that only did 2% of the work, doesn't mean they're going to get the same points. Next page. So here's a reminder that I put in for them about how to access their group in Canvas. And the link that you see takes them, yes, you can use my note. You can use anything from this course. We're going to give you access to this shell, and we're making it public so you can use anything that we present in this session. But this link takes them to tutorials on how to access their groups in Canvas. And it's a long list of tutorials. So use the LMS's tools that you're provided. So that's what we've done. I just linked to LMS made tutorials. Next. Now here's where we get into the big group work document. So Sherrell, if you'll open that group work document link. This is a Google Doc, and I do not allow them editing access. At the top of this, I have that they copy and paste it into their own. But when the groups first meet, they go through this group work document, and I have them do several things. So they have a group name. Part of becoming a part of a community is to feel a part of that community. So they, come up with a fun group name. Then I have them assign group members roles, and I give them some examples. And I tell them at the end that they don't have to use these examples, but that they can. So Oksana is asking, does it matter how early in the course you introduce the group project? It does not. So Sherrell and I have moved it around to different points. Sherrell, do you want to share your experience of wanting it earlier?
Actually, I used to have mine at the end, close to finals week. And I had students in the evaluation say, I absolutely did not want to do this group project, but after I did it, it helped me so much. Thank you for requiring us to do it. However, I so wish it would have been earlier in the year because I got to know my classmates in my group so well. If it would have been earlier in the year, we could have worked together throughout the semester on other things, had study groups. So I actually took my group project and moved it to earlier in the year. And then that way it's also not competing with all the other English teachers, who have things due at the end of the year. So it's actually now during the first part of the semester. So I have moved mine completely from the last of the semester to the first part of the semester.
And I think it depends on where it fits with your content. Because with my content, I can only move it so much because they have to have a foundation of basic tech writing skills before they can do the group project. So I wouldn't be able to move it to the first project just because of content that they have to know. But you know your own classes, so move it based on what you know. And Sherrell, there's a request to make it larger. Can you make the Google Doc larger? So this document shows you the different things that I have students do. They have to plan their communication. What are they thinking is important for communication? Because I might be thinking that logging in once a week and communicating is communicating often. And Sherrell thinks you should log in twice a day and communicate. We both are using the word often. I'm communicating often, but I make them narrow it down. What do you mean by often? So that they're all on the same page from the very beginning. Nothing bad has happened yet because they haven't gotten into the project yet. So they're setting up their rules before they have a problem. I have them design document protocols. When you have Word documents emailed back and forth, How do you know you're using the latest version? How are you going to label them? What are you going to do? How are decisions going to be made? What happens if people disagree? What are the rules? How are you going to resolve conflicts? And then additional information. What other information do you have? So this is an assignment that they submit to me and I give them feedback on it. And I'll tell them something like, a lot of times they'll say, we're all adults, we're going to behave like adults. And I tell them, well, some adults do not behave professionally. So what do you mean by adult behavior? Adult behavior is also passing out in the gutter. Adult behavior is going to prison. Adult behavior. So what do you mean you're going to behave like adults? So I make them think through this. And I do a lot of announcements where I talk through different aspects of this group project. And I tell them, think of the very worst group experience you've ever had and plan for that, because that's what's going to happen. So next page, please. The next thing they do is just a very brief proposal memo. It's only 4 to 6 sentences where they give me a general idea of what they want to do. And you'll see when Sherrell does her presentation, my preparation is the biggest part of what I have students do, because this is a 5-week project that is 35% of their grade. So I make sure that they have a very solid foundation before they get into a miserable 5 weeks. I want it to be a great 5 weeks. So Sherrell's now going to show you her information that she does beforehand.
Yes, so my project occurs in my Intro to Business course. It does not have near the value grade wise as Tanya's has, nor does it take as much time as Tanya's. Mine's only 10% of the grade, and it's just a small little group project. So you have to determine that. What kind of value are you going to put on the group project? And so I still use some of the foundational type of things that Tanya uses, but it's just not as robust as Tanya's is. Both have their place, and I think you will see both of them have the foundational type things in them. Early in the course, the students complete a survey with information that I use to assign the groups. So you notice Tanya lets the students choose their groups. Mine, they don't get to do that. I want the surveys completed early so I can use that information along with observations about the students to make wise decisions in grouping them based on when they can meet and on their skills and abilities. I incorporate information from several different chapters. We focus on the curriculum information from our social responsibility chapter, from our management chapter, and from our business communication chapter. So I take concepts from several different areas, put them together for this group project. So new concepts are not being covered in the project. It's just used as an assessment tool on things that they've already learned. In the business communication chapter, students read articles, they watch videos on how to work collaboratively in a group. And then these items work great in that unit because they teach valuable skills related to business communication, as well as prepare them for this project. They later learn how to use Zoom, Google Docs, Screencast-O-Matic, those kinds of things, even though they can use whatever tools they want to use for the project. I teach them everything they need to know just in case they don't know how to use those things. So you couldn't see all that because I made it so large, but here is my information sheet And again, you're going to have access to all of this. So my information sheet is just really, there's not a whole lot to it. I just ask for their name, the current city where they live, because we're right here at a military base. So a lot of our students are overseas when they're taking our courses. So I need to know, if they're giving me information about the proper time zones. We have students from all over taking our courses. Also, I try to stress that we're mountain time, so they need to make sure when they're giving me their availability that they're considering mountain time. I ask them if they're willing to share their phone number with their group, and then are they willing to allow me to give that and get in text. And then I ask them about some of their skills. Have you participated in virtual meetings before? Do you have strong writing skills? Do you know how to format APA? Are you familiar with Word? Have you worked on group projects before? And then when I'm forming the groups, I try to consider those things. My top priority is to get them in a group where they have time availability with each other. Then I try to get people with these various skills in various groups so that they're spread out. And I don't put all of the people with these strong skills in one group, but that they're separated out into those different groups. So I start warning them early that they have a group project coming up. And when we get to chapter 4, and that just happens to be our chapter on social responsibility, and that's going to be the topic that's going to be focused on. So I start warning them ahead of time, even though they're not in groups yet. I start saying, really focus on this chapter, because you're going to utilize this information again in your group project. I start giving them little hints about that group project. And then I've given you my actual overview page where I start focusing on that. I just put that in for you to kind of look at. And then here's chapter 5, where this is my business communication chapter, where I'm really focusing on those pre-group activities. So here's where they're actually learning how to work in a group. Now, again, they're not in their groups yet, but this is teaching them those group work concepts. So they are reading articles and they're watching videos. Now, remember, it's also about other things dealing with business communication. So working collaboratively, that has too many syllables in a group. So they're reading articles, they're watching videos about setting rules in group projects and all of that. So this is all of my pre-work in my group. And there's my whole overview module. Now, one thing that's critical in this pre-work group, as I stated earlier, is for you to assess them on that pre-group work. So this is the question that comes. I have a lot of questions about business communication, but these are specific to that collaborative work portion, and I ask them these questions. So again, that's not near as elaborate as Tanya's, because my project doesn't count as much, but I still want them to learn how to work as a group before I actually have them work as a group. Now, we have set up a Google Doc where we would like you, if you have some other tips to add, that you can go in there and add the tips. And I am actually going to put this link in the chat. Got too many different things going on here at once. There's the link in the chat. So if you would like to put some more ideas there that everyone can access. Someone's asking some questions. Tanya, if you can read it. For some
So
chat type is so large that
so I'll keep track of the type or the chat. So the question we haven't answered yet is, do you meet with your group synchronously at any point of the group project?
And mine is no, I don't. But you will see in a minute that I do a video where I talk to them, I go through that project, and my video's there that you can watch and see how I taught to them. I have so many students in my class that having a Zoom meeting with them would not be productive. So I do not have a Zoom meeting, but Tanya, you do give them the opportunity to come to a Zoom meeting?
I do. So I have several, I never make it mandatory, but I have several Zoom sessions throughout the group project. They are required to meet synchronously in Zoom, and they can invite me if they want to, but I don't have to be there. But I do offer my own Zoom sessions if a group wants to come and talk to me. And then there's another question. Do you have groups submit agendas and minutes? How about a progress report? So we're getting into that next, Hank.
Just a minute. Yeah.
That is part of my process. One of the things I make them do is their agendas and their minutes.
Right. I also require my students, they have to meet virtually. They cannot meet in person. And I intentionally put someone who's not from Alamogordo, where our campus is, in their group. I do not want them meeting in person. It's a business class. In real world, they are going to have meetings virtually. They are not going to be meeting in person in the business environment. So they're not allowed to meet in person. And now with COVID, they don't need to be meeting in person, because I don't know if they're going to go by our COVID guidelines, our campus COVID guidelines. So I do not allow them. But that's been, for the 10 years I've been teaching this, they could not meet. So let me go back to the presentation here. And
so we're going to get into the project. I will answer Hank's question. So when you design your project, you have to make the expectations clear, detailed, thorough. You want students to know exactly what's expected of them. And you have to let them know what the evaluation is going to be from the very beginning. You don't want them to go through an entire group project and then find out how they're going to be evaluated. You make all of the expectations very clear from the very beginning of the project. For team members, they are accountable. So there's accountability expectations. Those are explained from the beginning, and the evaluation is explained from the beginning. And notice that we have should be separate from project grade. So the way they are going to be evaluated is not tied into the project grade. And we'll get into that too. So with my project, how I continue the planning, you'll notice that I had lots and lots of things at the beginning. And now in these 5 weeks, they are working really hard on their group project, but they don't have a lot of things due for me. So they have to submit a project plan. So they sent a proposal that was 4 to 6 sentences. Now they do a more in-depth project plan. And I'll show you what one of those looks like in a minute. And then midway through, they have to submit a progress report. So they have to tell me how they're doing. And the progress report is their chance to evaluate and revise the plan. I post regular announcements, so I'm constantly engaged with them. And then as I told Hank, I require the team to set agendas and to submit minutes. So all of that is part of the technical and professional communication. So Sherrell, if you'll go to the next page. So here is the project plan. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but if you'll scroll down, Sherrell, I give them an example of how to do a project plan. I explain it all. And then here's a sample. And this one is copied and pasted into Canvas. I do this on purpose because then I know exactly if the students came up with their own project plan or if they just copied and pasted this one. So notice that there's tasks laid out for the students. It's broken down by name. They have specific dates. And then when you scroll further down, they have to set their meetings, what day, what time. And this one has face-to-face meetings. And so I can tell them immediately, nope, you have to meet online. So change all these to Zoom. And then if you scroll to the very bottom, there's a Gantt chart. And I have a note because Canvas does not allow me to pull a true Gantt chart. So a Gantt chart is kind of like a bar chart. It'll have labels showing when things are due and how far along students are. So this gives them a visual. So I make them plan out their project. Then if you'll go to the next page, Sherrell.
Doesn't want to go. There we go.
So midway through the project, they've done all the planning, they've been meeting, and now they have to update. So they do a progress report. And for this one, I do give a downloadable sample, but this is where they revise. And in my announcements, I post that revising your plan doesn't mean you failed. Extending deadlines, doing things to make sure that you finish on time is what you're supposed to do. You make a plan and then things never go according to plan, so you have to revise. So that's what they do with this progress report. And that still is in the middle, so they still have 2 weeks left before their project is due to make revisions. And so I only have these two things that they're doing while they're working on their big group projects. But you'll see that Sherrell has quite a few things that she has them do.
So my actual project focuses on the groups and not so much on well, it has no new curriculum content. They do prepare a paper on a topic that we've covered in class, that social responsibility, but I really want them to focus on working collaboratively. The teams are responsible for the final product. There are no excuses for someone not getting their part completed. So that part, so they can't tell me, well, so-and-so didn't do their part, so don't grade that part against our group. They can't give me any excuses. Just like on the job, the project must be completed when it is due. They need a backup plan and to have the project completed early enough that everyone can step in if someone doesn't follow through. Groups can request that a member be fired, but for that to occur, they must provide me evidence that the member has abandoned the group and they have reached out purposefully with no luck in getting the group member to participate. So they just can't say, oh, well, we tried and this person. They have to prove to me that they tried to get the group member to participate and it didn't work. If a group member is fired, the other group members must still complete the project in its entirety. So they have to take on whatever responsibility that group member had, because that's how the business world works. If there's a project due date, the boss, the supervisor, the client is still expecting for that project to be completed. You can't go in and say, oh, well, we were supposed to present this advertising campaign, but this part of it's not here because that person didn't do their part. You can't go to the client and say that. So I'm trying to teach them real world business skills. So again, when it's actually time to get started on the project, I announce the groups to the members through an announcement. I also send individual group emails to each group. These emails include the contact information about their group members. And of course, I've already asked permission to do that in the surveys. And rarely do I have someone not give me permission to do that. But if they do, then I just don't give the phone number of that person out, and I'm very, very careful about that. So then they will have to do all their communication through the inbox of Canvas. The detailed information about the project is provided, including a video that I have made explaining the expectations and how the project will be graded. This is my exact page from Canvas that I use. I go back and I'll pull all the information that they covered in that session in the communication module. I pull it all and I put it in here and I'll just say, here's a review, or the student who didn't do it when they were supposed to, here it is. And then I also have my demonstration videos on how to use Zoom and how to use Screencast-O-Matic. And then here's my video that I've done in studio that explains in detail what I'm expecting of them. And then here's my actual group project information and my peer evaluation. So everything's here for them. Now remember, this is a small project. It's only counting 10% of their grade.
So Sherrell, there's a question. What happens to the student who was fired? What are consequences?
That's fired. I'll tell you that the student that's fired has typically stopped working in my class. So what you need to know is while they're doing the group project, they are still continuing on other curriculum in the class. So typically when they've stopped working in that group project, they've also stopped working in the class. So they've dropped out of the class. And I don't mean officially, but I mean they've stopped out of the class. So I'm typically already trying to contact the student myself to see what's wrong with them. I've probably already sent an early alert to on the student through our early alert system. I can probably see 1 or 2 students in the 10 years where it's been a student who's still participating in the class and they've just quit working in the group. But I taught to the student. I personally contact the student if they're still doing the other things in the class. And typically they get right back involved in the group project. I have never had a student not get back involved with the group unless they just quit coming to the class altogether. But they are pulled out of the group and they're not put in another group. So I know Tanya, and she's going to tell you in a minute what she does when her students get fired. But anyway, the first thing they do is I have them meet and then they have to complete this discussion. So after several warnings about that they need to meet, then mine meet and they set the rules of their group and they form their little roles if they if they want to. They've already had learned by this time different management styles. They've learned different motivation theories because this is a business class. And so I warn them that they need to go to the discussion, look what they're going to have to post about it. So these are the questions they're going to be asked in that discussion forum. The reason I put it in a discussion forum, I want them to be able to see, did they get the same information in that group meeting that everyone else attending that group meeting got? So they have to post before they can see the other people's discussion forums. And then, so did we all post the same rules? Did we all get the same thing from that virtual meeting? I do email checks on the group, asking how they're doing. I don't have a checkpoint because mine's a very minor activity. They're doing it while they're still completing chapters. It's a minor project. They don't have a lot of work to do. It's just to get them working as a group. They only meet probably a couple of times. They meet, they make their rules, they assign the tasks, and then they all go out and do their little project. They come back together. They meet again to put the project together, make it have one voice. So my project isn't near as focused as Tanya's is. Hers is much stronger. So again, make sure and put your little tips, any tips you might have on our Google Doc.
I'll post the link again. And while you're doing that, we have a few questions.
Okay.
So Stephanie, your question about how they receive their grade, we'll get into that in the very next section because we're going to talk about assessment. But Hank asked, does the group choose the leader? And how do you get the groups to establish norms? So in mine, in the group work document, they have to lay out the roles of everybody. And they use that document to establish norms. If you're talking about norms being the expectations, Hank, if you mean something else by norms, can you type that in? I just want to make sure we cover it right. But that group work document for my group project, because it is so huge, it is vital that they have the rules established for their group. Sherrell, do you want to answer for your group project?
Yeah, and I'm not really sure what you mean by norms. As far as setting up the leaders, I don't give them a lot of guidance because it's a business class. And I want them to figure out that they need to have a leader. And even if they don't establish a leader will evolve. And so the questions that I ask later on, and you'll see those when we get to assessment, and we're kind of running out of time, so I'm kind of pushing this. You'll see that I want them to talk about the leadership roles and what type of leader. So I'm not really forcing that point because I want to see that natural leadership because of my management unit. So let's talk about assessing, and then we'll try to get to some more questions. Assessing the project, the students should know from the beginning exactly what the expectations are for the project and how that will be evaluated. Of course, the easiest way to share those expectations are through a rubric. Make sure that the expectations include how participation will be scored. No, it's not always fair. There will be times when others get credit for your work. However, part of being a good team member is to motivate and ensure all the team members are working. Grades can be lowered for not contributing, but can also be lowered for doing all the work and not allowing the rest of the team to participate. So Tanya's going to tell you how about her assessments.
So the project is graded. They submit it as a group and it receives a grade. But then I have a separate assignment link in Canvas where I will remove points for group members who are not scored high. So they do 2 evaluations at the end. One is on themselves and one is on their group. So I've given you access to what the collaborative project is that I have them do. They do a website. So when you go to the Canvas course, you'll see my project and how it's evaluated. And then the next page, Sherrell. So this is the group evaluation. And so there's a downloadable form, but then it's also right there in Canvas. They score each of their group members on a scale of 1 to 10. They regularly attend discussions and meetings. So they give each of their group members points and they have to add comments for why they scored their group members that way. I average the scores. If everyone in the group receives 90% or higher, they just get the score. But if they're down in the B range, I start doing the point deduction. And then the next page shows the self-evaluation. So they have to tell me what did they do? So then I compare the group evaluation to the self-evaluation to see if there's discrepancies. If somebody tells me they did 300 hours of research and yet they have 5 little website links, why did you do so much research? Something's not right here. But yes, it's an individual grade, Edith. So I average, and then I take away points for the group members who are not participating or the ones who took too much control. And you asked about firing members. My groups are only allowed to fire members if it's in their rules from the beginning. What has to happen for them to be fired? Just like a business, if you don't have it set up, you have this consequence and this consequence and this consequence, and then you're fired. They can't be fired. The group has to keep working with them, but they can give them a 0 because they're not showing up for projects, they're not doing things. So it doesn't mean that a non-participatory group member is going to get the 98% that the group got. And Sherrell's going to tell you how she evaluates hers. And this is my link for I'm going to take points away.
Right. So my group, and I'm just going to go on and show you here. So my people evaluate themselves and each other. I just do it all on one paper. Mine's on near the project of hers. They add themselves, they add all the group members, they do a ranking of each other. And then they have some questions. And I know this is kind of hard to see, but you'll have access. They answer questions about positive, the negative. And then because this is a business class, what leadership styles, what motivation theories, those are tied to my business class. So one person turns in the group project, and let me go to that. And then my rubric. So the top part of it, everyone gets the exact same grade, but then the last 15 points comes from that evaluation of themselves and their group members. So 15 points is based on that individual. If they don't submit that individual evaluation of themselves and their group members, they get a 0 on this group project. That tells me that they don't know enough to do that evaluation. So even if the other people evaluate them and say they helped with the project, they still get a 0 on it because they have to complete that individual group evaluation. So we have 3 minutes, and I want to make sure I get here so that I can post what this is going to do. By having this link, you will be able to go to this Canvas course. This is just, for some reason, now that's not it. I guess I didn't press enter earlier whenever I was posting something. So this is it. By having that link, you can go to this Canvas course, and it's available publicly, and you will have access to everything that we have just shown you, and you are welcome to use whatever's there. We're giving you access to everything that's there. So
we are now.
we have this if you have any questions.
Yeah, so please type your questions and then also copy down our contact information.
Yes.
Because as you go through the course, it's kind of like in math class, you think you understand, and then when you leave, you realize all the questions that you have afterwards. So copy our email addresses, and we are happy to share any more information, to talk through issues. If you're just designing a group project, we are happy to help you design one.
Absolutely. And the way you get to all this, just click on the title, the mystery title, and it will take you into this, or go to modules and it will take you in to it if you're not familiar with Canvas. We don't have it blue because you couldn't see the blue on the crimson. So we made the link white.
Thank you all so much for showing up. We appreciate you attending our session.
Well, thank you, Cheryl and Tanya. It's great. As when you guys leave, there'll be Zoom will give you a survey to fill out. So please fill out that survey. And thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys. I'm going to end the meeting.